My name is Emily, and you're listening to Daily English Talk, a podcast where we practice real, natural English together, slowly, calmly, like a real conversation. And today, I want to talk with you about dreams, goals, and the future, about the things we hope for, the things we imagine, and sometimes the things we are a little afraid to say out loud. Because talking about your future in English is not only about learning words or grammar. It's also about learning how to express who you are and who you want to become. And that's something very personal and very human. So let's take our time and talk about it together. When people talk about dreams, they often think about something very big and very far away, like becoming rich, moving to another country, starting a successful business, or changing their entire life. And yes, dreams can be big, but they can also be small and quiet, like wanting a calm life, wanting to feel confident when you speak English, wanting to wake up in the morning and not feel stressed. And all of these are dreams too, even if we don't always call them that. And I think it's important to remember that your dream doesn't have to impress anyone else. It just has to matter to you. When I ask my students or listeners about their goals, many of them say something like, "I don't know how to talk about my future in English," or "I know what I want, but I don't know how to explain it." And that's completely normal, because talking about the future means talking about uncertainty. And English has many ways to do that. We don't just say, "I will." We say, "I want to," "I hope to," "I'm planning to," "I'm thinking about," "I might," "I'd like to." And each of these expressions has a slightly different feeling, a different level of confidence, and a different emotional color. For example, when you say, "I want to move to another country," it sounds strong and clear, like a desire that already lives inside you. But when you say, "I'm thinking about moving to another country," it sounds softer, more open, like an idea that is still growing, and neither of these is better or worse. They just show different stages of a dream, because dreams don't appear fully formed. They change, they grow, they become clearer over time, and the way you talk about them changes too. I remember when I was younger, I didn't have a very clear plan for my future. And honestly, that made me feel uncomfortable because everyone around me seemed to know exactly what they wanted. They had a career path, a timeline, a 5-year plan, and I felt like I was behind, like I was doing something wrong. But later, I understood that not knowing is also part of the journey. And sometimes, the most honest sentence you can say is, "I'm still figuring things out." And that sentence is perfectly okay in English and in life. So let's imagine you're talking to someone and they ask you, "What are your dreams?" Or, "Where do you see yourself in 5 years?" And maybe inside you feel nervous because you don't want to sound silly or unrealistic or unsure. But you don't need perfect English or a perfect plan to answer. You just need to be honest and simple. You can say something like, "In the future, I'd like to improve my English and work in a field I enjoy." Or, "I hope to travel more and gain new experiences." Or, "My goal is to become more confident and independent." And these sentences are clear, natural, and very human. One thing I really want you to remember is that English speakers don't always expect a very detailed answer when they ask about your goals. Often it's just a way to connect, to understand you a little better, and a simple answer is more than enough. You don't need to tell your whole life story unless you want to. And the more you practice talking about your future, the easier it becomes because your brain starts to connect your dreams with the language. And that's a powerful thing. Let's talk a little about the difference between dreams and goals. Because in English, we often use these words together, but they're not exactly the same. A dream is usually something emotional and inspirational, something that makes you feel excited or hopeful, while a goal is more concrete, more practical, something you can work towards step by step. For example, my dream is to live a free and creative life, but my goal is to post 3 videos every week. Or, my dream is to help people, but my goal is to learn how to communicate better. And when you talk about both in English, you show depth. You show that you're not only dreaming, but also acting. Sometimes people are afraid to talk about their dreams because they're scared of failing, and if they say their dream out loud, it suddenly becomes real. And that can be scary. But I believe that saying your dream, even quietly, even in simple English, is already a step forward. It's like telling yourself, "This matters to me." And that's important, especially if you're learning English for your future, for travel, for work, for content creation, or for a new life in another country. If English is not your native language, you might feel that your personality becomes smaller when you speak it, like you can't express everything you feel, and that's normal. But over time, as your vocabulary grows, your personality grows in English too. And one day, you'll notice that you can talk about your hopes, your fears, your plans, and your values almost as freely as in your native language. And that moment feels amazing, because it means English is no longer just a subject you study. It's a tool for your life. I often recommend practicing by talking to yourself. You can do it in your room while walking, or even in your head. You can say things like, in the future, I want to, or my biggest goal right now is, or I'm working toward. And don't worry about mistakes. No one is listening. This is just for you. And this kind of practice builds confidence in a very gentle way. Another helpful thing is to talk about different time horizons, not only big future dreams, but also near goals, like what you want to achieve this month, this year, or in the next few years, because English has a lot of flexible structures for that. You can say, this year, I want to focus on my health, or in the next few months, I'm planning to save some money, or someday, I hope to start my own project. And all of these sentences are very common in everyday conversations. I want to pause for a moment and say this directly to you. If you're listening right now and you feel unsure about your future, or you feel like you're late, or behind, or not good enough, please know that many people feel the same way. Even those who look confident on the outside. And learning English, working on yourself, dreaming about something more, all of this already means you're moving, even if it feels slow. And slow progress is still progress. Talking about dreams is not about predicting the future perfectly. It's about allowing yourself to imagine possibilities. And English gives you many soft and flexible ways to do that. You don't have to say, this will definitely happen. You can say, I'd like it to happen, or I'm open to new opportunities, or I'm curious about what the future will bring. And these expressions leave space for change, growth, and surprises. As we continue this conversation, I want you to listen not only to the words, but to the rhythm, the calm pace, the way ideas flow into each other, because this is how real spoken English sounds. It's not sharp or perfect, it's fluid, sometimes repetitive, sometimes emotional, and that's okay. And when you speak about your future, it's okay to repeat yourself, to search for words, to pause, because that's what real people do. Sometimes your dream today will not be your dream tomorrow. And that doesn't mean you failed. It just means you learned something about yourself. And in English, you can express that too. You can say, I used to want to, but now I'm more interested in, or my goals have changed over time. And that shows reflection and maturity, which are very respected qualities. I believe that talking about dreams in English is one of the most motivating ways to learn the language. Because suddenly, it's not abstract anymore. It's connected to your real life, your real desires, your real future, and that makes every new word more meaningful because it's not just vocabulary, it's a tool to build the life you want. And as we keep going, I want you to imagine that you're sitting with me, maybe with a cup of coffee or tea, having a relaxed conversation, no pressure, no tests, just sharing thoughts about life and the future. Because that's exactly the feeling I want Daily English Talk to give you. A place where you can learn and feel supported at the same time. And as we keep talking about dreams and goals, I want to gently remind you that the future is not something fixed. It's not a straight line that you have to follow perfectly. It's more like a direction, something you move toward, sometimes slowly, sometimes with doubts, sometimes with unexpected turns. And when you talk about your future in English, you don't need to sound like you have everything under control, because real life doesn't work that way. And native speakers know that too. So honesty is always more important than sounding impressive. A lot of people think that to speak about goals, they need very advanced English, big words, complex sentences. But in reality, simple language is often the most powerful. Saying something like, I want a better life, or I want to grow and improve may sound basic, but it's clear, sincere, and easy to understand. And clarity is one of the most important things in communication, especially when you're talking about something meaningful. Sometimes I hear people say, I don't have big dreams. And they say it almost with shame, like it's a bad thing. But having a simple dream, like stability, peace, health, or freedom, is not small at all. These are deep and valuable goals, and English gives you many calm and respectful ways to talk about them. You can say, my main goal is to live a balanced life, or I want to feel more calm and confident in the future. And these sentences sound very natural and thoughtful. Let's talk a bit about fear, because fear is often connected to dreams, especially fear of the future, fear of making the wrong choice, fear of wasting time. And when you learn how to talk about these feelings in English, you also learn how to understand yourself better. You can say, sometimes I'm afraid of the future, but I'm still trying. Or, I'm not sure what will happen, but I'm open to learning. And these sentences show vulnerability, and vulnerability is not weakness, it's honesty. One interesting thing about English is that it allows you to be very gentle with uncertainty. You don't have to be absolute. You can use words like maybe, probably, hopefully, I think, I feel, and these words create space. They show that you're thinking, reflecting, growing. And that's exactly what most people are doing anyway, even if they don't say it out loud. If you're learning English for work or for a future career, talking about goals becomes especially important because interviews, conversations, and networking often include questions about your plans. But again, you don't need perfect answers. You can say something like, right now, I'm focused on developing my skills. Or, in the long term, I'd like to grow in this field. And these answers are professional, realistic, and honest, and they don't require complicated grammar. I also want to mention that sometimes your goal is not about achieving something new, but about changing something inside you, like becoming more confident, more disciplined, more patient, and these are very real goals. You can talk about them in English too. You can say, I'm working on becoming more confident, or I want to be more consistent. And these sentences are very common in everyday English. When you practice talking about your future, try not to rush yourself. You don't need to have an answer for everything right now. Life is long, and you're allowed to change your mind. You're allowed to explore, and you're allowed to rest. And all of this can be expressed in simple English, sometimes even with just one sentence, like I'm taking things step by step, which is a very natural and popular expression. I've noticed that many people learning English feel pressure to be productive all the time, to improve fast, to reach goals quickly. But growth doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet, sometimes it's invisible, like listening to a podcast, thinking about your future, learning how to say what you feel. And these small moments add up over time, even if you don't notice it immediately. Talking about dreams can also be very motivating, especially when you say them out loud, even if it's only to yourself or to this podcast. Because when you hear yourself say, I want to, or I'm working toward, it becomes more real, and your brain starts to believe that change is possible, and that belief is often the first step toward action. Another thing I love about English is how flexible it is. When talking about time, you don't have to lock yourself into one future version of yourself. You can say, at some point, I'd like to, or in the future, maybe I'll. And these expressions allow you to dream without pressure, without deadlines, just curiosity and openness. And curiosity is such an important part of growth, being curious about who you might become, about what opportunities might appear, about how your English might improve over time. And when you talk about your future with curiosity instead of fear, everything feels a little lighter, a little more possible. If you ever feel stuck, try this simple exercise. Finish these sentences in your own words. In the future, I want to feel, one thing I'm proud of right now is, one thing I want to improve is, and don't judge your answers. There are no right or wrong ones. This is just a way to connect language with self-reflection. I truly believe that learning English is not only about communication with others, but also communication with yourself. Learning how to name your thoughts, your dreams, your intentions, and when you can do that in another language, it gives you a new perspective. Sometimes even a new version of yourself, one that feels braver, more open, more hopeful. As we get closer to the end of today's episode, I want you to take a moment and think about your future, not in a stressful way, not with pressure, but gently. Like looking at the horizon, you don't need to see everything clearly. You just need to know that you're moving forward, even if it's one small step at a time. And remember, your English doesn't have to be perfect to talk about meaningful things. Your accent, your mistakes, your pauses, they're all part of your journey, and every time you practice, you're getting better, even if it doesn't feel like it today. Thank you for spending this time with me, for listening, for thinking, for dreaming a little. It really means a lot that you're here. And if this podcast helps you feel more confident speaking English, if it helps you think about your future in a calmer and clearer way, please consider subscribing to Daily English Talk. It's the best way to support the podcast and make sure you don't miss new episodes. You can also listen again, practice, and grow with each new conversation. So go ahead and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next episode, where we'll continue learning English together. One thought, one sentence, and one step at a time.